a little bit about digital marketing and press outreach for crowdfunding. You may have been in several panels or conversations about crowdfunding before. In many of those presentations, I believe they're very high level, and it's very hard to take action upon kind of those tips and that type of advice. So today I want to dive a little bit deeper into actual tactics and strategy for executing on a crowdfunding campaign. So before joining Indiegogo, I actually ran my own crowdfunding campaign, which is how I'm very familiar with what it's like to get super in the weeds with running a campaign. And then before that, I worked at Pinterest building up our advertising platform. So I have a little bit of know-how in e-commerce, and a lot of that skill set is translated into my ability to guide and consult companies for their crowdfunding campaigns. So basically my day-to-day is working with companies and helping them plan and execute upon their campaigns, whether it's them coming to me and telling me that they need partners in certain areas, or them coming to me and seeking advice around price points or distribution channels or marketing channels. So I'll cover that a little bit in this presentation. And before we actually tackle the details, I think it's important to take a step back and understand why people are crowdfunding and understanding why you're considering it or doing it yourself. So one of the interesting trends we're seeing at Indiegogo across all of our companies is that crowdfunding is actually becoming, even beyond just the platform to raise funds for manufacturing, it's actually becoming a go-to-market strategy, especially for hardware projects. So the history of Indiegogo, I think this is important to consider, is that it originally was a way for creative projects to actualize into reality. So this includes things such as film, music, and for these types of projects, it's very hard to find traditional capital and traditional investments. So these project creators turn directly to their fans and their community to ask them to back their projects so that they can make their film or their music albums into reality. So Indiegogo, founded in 2008, was basically the first time that crowdfunding existed and was actually the originator of crowdfunding. Fast forward to 2012, and hardware companies, that was the time when the maker community really started to grow and evolve. And in 2012, traditional investment from VCs, angels, seed investments, those were very hard because hardware had insurmountable challenges that software companies did not have. That included fixed costs for capital, for manufacturing, getting products out there, logistics, and distribution. And so one of the first success cases that we saw in 2013 was Buggasol. And Buggasol is a really good example of how crowdfunding can really help to elevate a hardware project. So Buggasol is exactly what it looks like. It's a plastic gun, and you put in regular table salt, and it shoots out the salt in a pressurized manner so as to kind of destroy any bugs that you see. So this might sound like a crazy idea, and it probably did to a traditional investor. But the founder of the company, his name was Lorenzo, based out of Santa Monica. He decided to take his project to crowdfunding, and within 30 days was able to raise over $500,000 across more than 10,000 customers. So this goes to show that if you're able to find a product market fit and launch that through crowdfunding, then you can actually kind of bypass that traditional path of seeking a fixed amount of capital across traditional investors or even among your friends and family and launch the project. So what does this mean for hardware companies? It means that customers end up paying for your manufacturing. And because of that, you're able to distribute the risk of launching a company across multiple stakeholders. So that's when we saw hardware really taking off on our platform. And in 2013, that was when we saw multiple multi-million-dollar campaigns on the platform, including the likes of Xanadu, Jibo, Canary, across multiple types of hardware projects. So around 2016, on Indiegogo, we have over 700,000 projects, roughly 2,000 new projects a week, over $1 billion funds raised, and we're an incredibly international platform operating in more than 230 countries. So I mentioned earlier that we're seeing companies more and more using crowdfunding as a go-to-market strategy, and that means that you're using crowdfunding beyond just raising funds to produce your product, but also as a sales and marketing channel to elevate your brand as you're launching your company. So you want the press that comes with a crowdfunding campaign, you want the social validation, you want to be able to test your hypotheses about your audience and your customer segments. I mentioned earlier that I worked for a company before and I helped them run a crowdfunding campaign, and this was that campaign. So we were able to raise over $460,000, but as important as the funds raised was to us, what was even more important was our ability to test and validate the audience. So you saw in the previous image here, we have this full-size piano, and this product sold very well locally in the China ecosystem here in Beijing. So it was the best-selling digital piano on the web in China. And we took this product to the US, and we were trying to better understand, is this the right product for the US market? What we learned through the crowdfunding campaign was that customers in the West, mainly in the United States or in Europe, much prefer a more lightweight version of the product, less focused on education, more focused on entertainment, and with a different software experience. And we learned that by offering both SKUs through Indiegogo, and we saw which product generated more sales through the campaign. In addition to using Indiegogo and crowdfunding as a sales channel and a way to raise funds for that new SKU we were producing, we also got a lot of social and media traction, and we used those early sales to be able to speak with sales channels in our line reviews with retailers and prove to them that we already had a customer base. So you can kind of see in the press section, although the press here brought us a ton of traffic that converted very well for the campaign, these were press logos that we were able to use in our marketing materials when we went to CES, when we went to other types of events. So this type of branding you can carry with you, and it goes a long way. And then in terms of sales channels, all of the channels that you see on the right-hand side, we were actually able to start distributing through these channels within 6 months after our crowdfunding campaign. So all in all, crowdfunding was a really good way for us to accelerate our presence in the local market. And then I want to talk about another project here. They're called XGenie. XGenie is a high-definition projector with built-in speakers, and they raised over $300,000, but what's even more exciting than the funds raised was their ability to carry their early customer set as seeded customers for all of their presence across multiple retail channels. So this is an example of an Indiegogo customer who actually purchased the product through Indiegogo and then went onto Amazon to tell other customers about how positive their experience with the product was. So for those of you who sold on Amazon, you know that your star rating is really important for your on-site ranking as well as the number of reviews. So right after their campaign, they were able to sell directly through Amazon, get a huge boost in the number of reviews they had, and ultimately be able to increase their sell-through. This is also an interesting one. So XGenie traditionally is a company based out of Chengdu in China, and you can see kind of through Google Trends that they attempted a market entry and sort of a launch back in 2013. So Google Trends, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a way for you to gauge your digital traction and how kind of popular you are on the web through search queries. So you can see that when they launched their first Indiegogo campaign, they were actually able to more than 5 times increase their brand recognition and their presence on the web. And then last month, they launched their second campaign, giving them that second spike. And I think the interesting thing you'll see here is that that spike is not just temporary. It's lifted the brand recognition in an upward trajectory, even despite the campaign being over. So these are just examples of other projects that have launched on the platform. A lot of them actually even being based internationally. So this is FlexBikes, raising over $1.7 million. OmniCharge is a recent project that raised over $2.3 million, and this was a portable charging bank that was powerful enough and portable enough to charge your MacBook and your cameras. And this was Lunamoon. Lunamoon was an interior design piece, an inflatable lamp, which they were trying to figure out, is there a customer for us in the Western markets? And if there is, how do we generate the funds to actually create this product? So those are examples of very successful crowdfunding campaigns, but The stats in the industry are that less than 1% of all campaigns raise over $100,000. So how do you plan a successful crowdfunding campaign? Today I want to go through the overall process, and then we'll dive into a bit of detail around the digital marketing and the PR outreach front. So planning your campaign for the very first time. This is a common question, which is like, how long in advance do I need to prepare for the campaign? We see campaigns start as early as a year in advance, as early as 6 months in advance, but really in order to get all of the tasks on the checklist covered, you need to start at least 1 to 3 months in advance. 1 month meaning that you probably have everything else on your checklist covered, and 3 months being that you want to invest in a full pre-launch strategy around generating awareness around your campaign. So what do you need to have prepared in order to consider a crowdfunding campaign? A working prototype. So a lot of projects may not be fully mass manufactured, but you at least need a working prototype to show other people how it's going to work, whether that's through the video, through product photography, or through some sort of early user experimentation with the product through videos. Marketing assets. So that includes what I mentioned earlier around the video, product photography, and copywriting around your product. Payment setup, so you'll need to think through, how am I going to receive the funds? Is it through PayPal? Is it through credit card? And then a manufacturing plan. And this one gets overlooked sometimes, but backers are skeptical of crowdfunding now, and it's because of the fact that certain projects out there haven't actually shipped before. So you want to make it very clear to your backers that you have a plan and you know how to utilize the funds in order to make your product a reality. So timing is actually also really important, especially for different product types. I think some general rules of thumb to consider, so holidays. So if anyone's thinking about launching a crowdfunding campaign this month or next month, just keep in mind that crowdfunding customers are early adopters, and they're very different from the traditional Amazon customer. So imagine on Amazon, you can receive a product in 2 days or overnight or in a week. Crowdfunding customers are relatively price insensitive, and they're willing to wait a long time to see their products. So that means they're willing to pay for innovation, but they also want to hear from you regularly because they are investing in you. They're investors in your company. You should also keep in mind, hypothetically, if you're, let's say, working on a bike product, perhaps winter time is not the best time to consider a crowdfunding campaign because buying a bike may not be the thing that's top of mind for you. You might be considering other things. Or if you're working on a jacket product and you want to launch in the summertime but it's really hot and nobody wants to buy a jacket during that season. So you have to keep these types of user behavior and mentality in mind as you're thinking about timing. Budgeting is also a really important thing to consider. So how much money do I have to invest in a marketing campaign? And depending on where what that budget is, you want to allocate it roughly with this type of ratio. Just keep in mind that producing a video is not cheap sometimes. If you want to invest in ads, you might want to save anywhere from 7 to 12% of your goal. And then if you want to work with a partner, such as a partner to help you pitch media or help you run Facebook ads, that can be quite a hefty cost for you as well. So partners is a big topic in crowdfunding. A lot of companies will turn to crowdfunding agencies. You probably come across them, or on a crowdfunding campaign you might have seen the agent's name listed on the page. But partners can be very good for you if you identify a specific weakness on your team. So for example, if you spend a lot of time developing the product and you know you want to take it to market, but on your team you know no one has any experience running Facebook advertising, it may not be the best use of your time to go learn that from scratch and launch it through a campaign in a month's time. So in this case, you would enlist a partner to help you take care of that specific piece. And this is an example of how you might divide the duties between your team and your partners. Some factors to consider if you're deciding whether you should use an agent or not is the cost. So roughly speaking, you can expect an agent sometimes to cost from $1,000 to $20,000 as a monthly retainer. Time to launch. Most companies, most agencies need at least 1 to 2 months lead time in order to have enough time to fit you on their schedule with their other clients. So you have to make sure that you reach them in advance. And then the last one is team expertise. So knowing what you're weakest at and understanding how to identify that sort of talent among the agency. Creating marketing materials. So this feeds directly into your Indiegogo campaign page, and this is really important because this influences your conversion rate. And your conversion rate is the total number of backers you get divided by the total traffic to your page. So your goal is to make that conversion rate as high as possible. You want to convert literally as many people visiting your page as possible. So videos in general, keep it as short as possible. Keep it simple. Don't include long narratives. Don't include long background stories around the problem statement. Talk about the advantages of your product, how your product is better than anything else out there, and core and concrete use cases so that the user can imagine themselves using your product. What kinds of videos do you need? The main campaign video is very important because a lot of people don't want to scroll down through that really long vertical orientation of a crowdfunding page, so they'll just actually click the video, watch the first few seconds of it, and use that to determine if they'll actually read the rest of the campaign. Social media. So social media is a really good place for you to put extra content so that you show backers that you're an engaged company, you show backers that your product's real, and that you're engaging with the community. So this can include early user testimonials. So if you've got a prototype, get it in the hands of people that you don't know, let them just try it, and tell them to express their feedback through these videos. Team unboxings. This is a very special type of marketing asset for crowdfunding campaigns, which is you walking the backers through your creation and your manufacturing process to let them feel like you're going to make this reality and to make them feel like they're part of the vision and the mission of your company. So this could be your entire team unwrapping your first product boxing or being at the plant together or even sitting behind your desks and working on the product. And then product demonstration. So if your product has multiple features and you want to highlight those core features through very clear demonstrations through a video. So product photography. This is an interesting one because a lot of the times you don't have a fully well industrialized design for your product as you're crowdfunding. So what you want to do here is make sure that any product shots you use do not look incredibly rendered. And this is a big mistake that we see a lot of companies make, which is they want their product to look very beautiful on the campaign page, so they over Photoshop the image and they want to make it look really clean, but actually people want to believe that it's real and people want to actually see it in action. So in addition to just product shots with left, right, and product on a white background, they want to see the product in use in their lives so that they can imagine themselves using the product as well. And then the last one is a prototype gallery, so showing people every stage of the development and showing people that you've thought this through and it's going to be a product that functions and works when they receive it. So building awareness around your launch. Your ultimate goal is traffic to your page, and that comes from various sources. So before you launch, you're engaging your network, your friends, your family. You're collecting emails on your website's landing page to let people know that you're going to be launching soon, and you're going to make yourself as searchable as possible. So if anyone's ever heard anything about your product or campaign before, they're going to go search for it and they can find something. And then after you launch, you're going to be focused on driving traffic from press articles, from product reviews and blog posts, and then also from advertising. And we're going to dive into more details on these. And then finally, we want to look at the campaign page itself, which is the storyline and the perks. So this is actually, on the screen here, the general structure that we see for crowdfunding campaigns, for the reason that this is the general order in which people consume the information and decide whether or not they want to read on to the next step. Perk strategy is also important, which is what sort of price point is going to compel people to believe that they want to back me right now versus wait until I'm available in retail later on. So you might have seen the common terminology here is early bird pricing. We see that on average people try to price that around 20% off and then offer different pricing tiers. So in addition to a discounted price, you also have that countdown ticker of a 30-day campaign. So both of these factors can drive incredible conversions for your campaign. And then the other thing is thinking about the types of perks that you're going to be offering to the people who back your campaign. Maybe you have accessories later on that you want to introduce. Our advice and suggestion is to keep it really simple for the first backers or who are going to get you to your campaign goal. Once you get to your goal, that's when you can introduce the frills around other types of accessories, other types of features, and upsell your existing customer set. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into digital marketing, because digital marketing is an area in which we find that a lot of companies really need third-party support in the form of agencies, or if they try to do it themselves, it's really hard to grasp. And the basis of digital marketing essentially is to identify your biggest, strongest target customer and then speak to them. And when we say your biggest niche audience, we don't mean a small audience size, we mean the audience that resonates best with your product, and that has to be the biggest volume. So there's different ways for you to find that target audience. You can be interacting with early customers, getting a lot of feedback around them. A lot of those types are not scalable though, so you can use a combination of research tools to figure out how to identify those. An interesting one is Google Trends. So an interesting way to use it, I've got let's say I'm working on an electric bike product. I'm going to check the interest of electric bikes over time, compare that with a brand that I know called Saunders, and then I'm going to look up related terms like e-bikes, electric scooters, and I can map out the relative volume of those trends against each other to figure out which ones I would potentially be interested in appealing to. Google Consumer Surveys is actually a very good one as well. So instead of using expensive Facebook ads to try to get responses to a survey for a question you ask, Google Consumer Surveys actually can get your responses for as low as 5 or 10 cents per response. So you can spend $50 to answer a very basic question around understanding customer sentiment around your problem statement. And then the Google Keywords tool is also very similar to Google Trends. You can search very specific long-tail keywords, such as, rent electric bike, to understand relative demand and search volumes for those products. So collecting our customers' information and storing it is the core strategy behind having a very successful day one of your launch. And the reason you want day one of your crowdfunding to be very big is because you want people to see that you are going to hit your goal, that you have enough funds to manufacture, and that once you hit 100% of your goal, then the rest of the people seeing the page will have a lot more confidence in backing your project. So that said, these are the ways in which you really want to focus on storing your customers' information. And for all of these different ways, there are different conversion rates associated with it. And this is really important, so I want to spend some time on this. Email marketing is incredibly, incredibly important. And the reason is because that's the most direct way to reach your customers. If you're checking your email versus browsing Facebook, on Facebook you know that when you see an ad, it's some sort of ad, and sometimes it may avert your gaze. But every morning when you check your inbox, if this email and this person you expressed interest in is sitting at the top of your inbox, you're a lot more likely to interact with and respond and take a look at that email. So that's why we see the highest conversion rate for emails. One of the best ways we suggest you to anticipate how much funds you raise on your day one is to take the size of your email list and multiply that by a conversion rate of 5 to 10%, depending on how qualified that list is. Once you do that math, you multiply that by your price point, and that's basically how much funds you'll roughly raise on your first day. So that gives you good anticipation to figure out how much more traffic you need to drive to your page in order to really drive traction. Another interesting way is website cookies. So before you launch, you have a landing page, right? You want to actually capture all the cookies of those people who have taken the time to click onto your page, read through that information, and then you should retarget all those people. And for those of you who aren't familiar, retargeting is a method in advertising in which you're able to grab the cookie of the person who's visited your website, and then you can find them again on Facebook. So on Facebook, then I can find that exact person who's looked at my website, maybe clicked a certain button or visited a specific product, and then upsell them again with the same product and a message that gets them through to actually back the project. Other customer lists. So in addition to your own email list, think about partners and organizations and other email newsletters that you read that you know that you interact with that may have a high audience overlap with yours. So when I was running the Smart Piano project, I knew that people who wanted to buy pianos would actually be more interested in our product than not. So we got included in a lot of email newsletters with Keyboard Magazine and Guitar Center and a lot more related niche press or outlets that we knew would drive high conversions for us. And the last one is social media fans. So what's really important here is to grow that following organically versus buying likes. So a good example is we worked on a campaign recently where every social Facebook post was boosted with a paid amount of money behind it, and that post received roughly 3,000 likes. But when the campaign launched, the way that Facebook works is those fans that have liked your pages or your posts, you cannot target them all again. You have to pay again to retarget them. So what's more important than getting a lot of likes on their page or getting high post engagement before your campaign is to actually grow that following organically so that people are regularly engaging with your posts. And that's sort of the algorithm Facebook uses to determine whether they want to show a post to someone who's liked your page or not. And then another common question we get is around what it takes to create a good Facebook ad. And this is a little bit of art and science. So here are examples of ads that we've seen that have converted well for our other campaigns. The basic principles behind it are, one, showcasing functionality, especially for our technology products. So you want to show the product being used, such as in this ad here, you're seeing somebody wearing a helmet and using it in their everyday life. Including the products being used by people. Oftentimes people like to include images with a lot of people in it, and it gets really messy and busy, but you still want to make the product the core focus of the image, and then avoiding generic stock photos and then too much text. Because on Facebook, a lot of the text should be under the ad or above the ad versus in the image itself, but it's very tempting to include as much information as possible. For copywriting, it's important to include a call to action, so it's learn more, buy now, support us, something like that. Don't just state something and then leave them there to figure out what the next step is. And again, keeping the text short and almost more of a teaser than not. So you want to make sure that there's a next step for them to learn more. You do not want to provide all the information to them so that there's no reason for them to click onto the page. So the next step would then be planning a media outreach plan. And the reason this is important is because any media outlets, blog posts, or reviews about your product will be driving traffic to your page and qualified traffic to your page that may end up converting into funds raised for your campaign. So there are 3 goals with media outreach. 1 being targeted, 2 being exclusive, and 3 being useful. So by targeted, we mean that if, let's say, we're working on a bike product, maybe TechCrunch or some sort of tech outlet isn't going to be the best fit for you. Instead, maybe a smaller, less widely read publication about bikes would be more compelling for your product, and you would want to target that press instead of general tech media. Being exclusive is also important as well, because you want the people you're communicating with to have a lore to write about your product. Just know that press are probably being pitched hundreds, if not thousands of times a day, and what is their incentive to write about your project if everyone else out there is going to be writing about the exact same thing? The journalists want something that they would be proud to publish, something in which they're conveying new information to their readers, and something in which they would feel like their customers would really, really like to learn more about. And then also being useful. So if your product is something that you want to be selling or getting more backers for, your main message shouldn't be, hey, just come and buy my product because of all these lists of specs. You should give a bigger story around, this is what my company's working on right now, and we plan to open source this, or we plan to use the funds raised to do other things, or this is the first product in our portfolio, and we want to create a bigger and better company in the future. So these brackets here are our recommendations around what we think you could consider if you're planning to invest in PR resources. So if you choose to hire someone to do PR for you externally, that can be quite expensive sometimes. If your budget's not that big, you may want to consider taking that in-house and doing it yourself, because reporters do like to hear from the founders and the team themselves. And there are some key strategies and terms that you should be familiar with as you're planning a crowdfunding campaign. So one of them is an exclusive. An exclusive is a story that you only offer to one specific outlet. So hypothetically, if you're working on, here's an example. So I'm working with a product right now, they're a bike lock, and when the bike lock gets hacked at, or if the bike lock is being tampered with by a thief, the lock will actually spray out a chemical that makes the thief vomit. So one of the exclusive stories you might have here is the chemical concoction of the actual formula itself. Or another exclusive might be the founder's story around how they came up with the idea. So basically, in a nutshell, providing a story only to this one outlet that you really want to write about a product in your launch, so that they feel more compelled to do so because they're the only one with that insider around your product. And the second one is an embargo. So if you're not familiar, an embargo is when you go to a reporter and you tell them you should not publish this article until X date at X time. And the reason this is important is because if you're pitching media 2 weeks in advance of your crowdfunding campaign and the reporter publishes about your product the very following day, then all the traffic that should be going to your campaign is going nowhere, and you're losing the conversions and the sales that you might be getting as the result of that publication in that press. So instead, you figure out what your launch date, what your launch time is, and then you tell them this is when you can publish the article. And embargoes are very important, and you want to make sure that anyone who you're talking to is going to hold that embargo and not publish about it before you launch. And here's some other items to prepare in advance of working on your PR and media outreach. So a demo video is actually very important sometimes, especially for crowdfunding projects, because in a lot of cases you may not have enough products to ship out as prototypes to every reporter who wants to see it. Plus, having a media asset for reporters to include in their write-ups is very important because media is a lot more searchable, a lot more shareable, and a lot more friendly to readers. Sample units to ship are also very important. There are a lot of writers out there who do not want your name behind products that may not exist, or products or projects that may end up being scammy or for some reason not being able to fulfill upon. So having those sample units is very helpful for the reporters to play around with it, write more in-depth reviews, and oftentimes can result in a lot longer coverage for your product. A press kit is also very important, so this is something nice to have for the reporters that you're reaching out to at scale. So this includes basically a zip file or some sort of Dropbox folder in which you're including your images, your screenshots, headshots of your founders, a press release, and also video files, basically anything that they could be using to put together a great write-up for your project. And then the last one is a press release. And if you're not familiar with a press release is basically a basic write-up about your company, about your product, and what you're working on. And then this gets sent over the wire. Sent over the wire means that this is sent to a lot of different publications out there, and news sites that want to syndicate this article or publish it on their own website will take that exact press release and just publish it. So a good example is like Yahoo News. They don't have in many sections of their site their reporters or their own journalists, so they go to the wire and they figure out what's most interesting, and then they can choose to publish it or not. So those are the basics of planning a crowdfunding campaign, and we can open up for more questions, but I hope that was helpful.